All right, welcome to the Kiwihoopers podcast. We're back again this week. This interview has been long overdue. We've been talking about it for 3 years now?
Something like that.
So it's a long time coming. I'm very excited to have my friend, Linden Moore, on the podcast. You might have seen her all over the social network, on the internet, promoting New Zealand women's basketball. Also, you have seen her in one of our episodes with the Joneses family. That was definitely one of my favorite episodes, that interview.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me on. I'm super excited and really great to be back on the pod, especially after that Jones family interview, which is still one of my favorite things I've ever done. So anyway, kia ora, Colin Tope Noa. So I'm American, as most people know, but I'm a lot of different things. But I would say, I guess, work-wise, I'm an advocate for women's basketball primarily, but I do a lot of advocacy for women's sport. I do a lot of blogging and social media and just, I guess, kind of facilitating a conversation and advocacy online is primarily the space that I do that. And that's just because I really believe that women can do anything, and that they are role models and that people should be able to see them. In New Zealand, I do that a lot on Instagram and some on Twitter or X. It's been kind of difficult to keep up both platforms, I guess, but Instagram is the one I primarily go on. And then on the other hat I wear is a researcher hat. So doing my PhD at AUT, and that has a focus on women's sport as well. So how I got here, it's been a bit of a zigzag direction, which is fine. I mean, and I guess that's not how my life has gone, but it's led me to some pretty cool places. In a nutshell, I was born, I couldn't play sport growing up because of a cardiac condition that I was born with that led to a bunch of heart surgeries, which I thought at the time was probably not the coolest thing. Even though I had an amazing childhood and my parents and my family are the absolute best. But instead of playing sport, what we did is we traveled the world because my parents were like, well, if we can't do that, then let's, go and, just kind of see what we can find and teach her different things. And so that's what we did. And then when I was home, I was with my family. So my family is really close. And one of the ways that we bonded was through sport. So I grew up a lot around basketball, tennis, and water polo. And, some weekends when I was little, we used to drive to his old primary school in the Bay Area where I'm from. And he would just give me basketball and we would just play for fun and nothing else. And so, I think basketball started there. And then, as I got older, my mom, because my grandparents had season tickets to college basketball and my uncle did as well. And so my mom would be like, hey, why don't we go on the weekend or whatever? And so I think I was about 13 when it was probably the first game I actually remember going to. And I just loved it in the community. And so after that experience, pretty much everything kind of culminated into one. And, in high school, they don't really teach you the sports business stuff or the stuff that you and I talked about and how to work in sport. They don't really teach you that. And so, it was a good, high school was an interesting experience, but it got me through and I learned a lot there. But by the time I got to uni, I learned a lot more about probably the stuff that you don't learn, like I said, in secondary. So you're going to get sports business and more journalism based stuff. And that's what I did there. And then, there's a bunch of other kind of long stories along the way of how I got here to New Zealand. But at the end of the day, after I discovered, this beautiful thing here in Aotearoa, it was how can I combine what I did at uni to help, come down here and do that because it combined traveling and combined the sport. But I really found who I was and myself. So at the end of the day, it's been a long one and it hurt. It did hurt somehow, kind of figuring some of those broken pieces and kind of figuring who I was along the way. But once I did, it was, it's been so worth it. And I get to do this, cool thing where I get to go to games and talk to athletes, go to the grassroots camps, really kind of do everything from grassroots up to Tohi, NBL professional. And get to know these amazing people, get to know the people behind the game. And so, going back to what I do, it's a lot of interviews, some behind the scenes, really anything that people would may do want to know about New Zealand basketball. That's what I'm doing. So I'm on the ground doing that and talking to people.
Like obviously, you mentioned about your childhood challenge. You definitely didn't have um, so-called normal childhood, right? Because the challenge that you have to overcome, which is incredible. Having a supporting parents really, really helped. And it was an honor for me to meet them in person. It was amazing. They're great people. And I can see the reason why you become who you are, such a giving person without asking anything back. I can see where that come from, you know? I want to rewind back a little bit about the season tickets and go and watch college basketball, right? There's a very important detail. You made a good friend, right? Panina Davidson. So would you like to go back on the detail how you guys met and how did that friendship blossom?
So Panina, it was one of those things where it happened kind of on accident. Rewind back 6 years when she was finishing up at Cal Berkeley, and then I'm at the University of Oregon, which is where I went to uni. I was just kind of doing some scouting for the Pac-12 tournament just as a fan, because I would go through all the schools and just kind of see who was there. And because Cal, because that's this school that my family has a connection to. And I just kind of went through everything and was just looking at each player. And I had actually gone to New Zealand the year before with my parents. So I knew when I see somebody who is far from home or international, it just kind of catches my eye, because having traveled, I know how big of a deal that is. And just because I'm also interested in the people side of women's sport and understanding who makes up the game. I was like, I have some time. So I just started clicking through all the links. And she had shared a lot about her mental health story and a lot about her basketball journey. I related to her. It wasn't verbatim word for word, but a lot, I think, of what she said in a way did resonate with me, even though I didn't really understand the way it did yet. We ended up connecting on social media, which for me was like, wow. When she first signed a WNBL contract right out of uni, I was able to order that jersey online. And so I actually had it shipped to my house in Oregon. And I think I went to a Cal women's basketball game over the break or something, and I had posted about it. She messaged me, she's like, how did you do this? And I was just like, I just found it. I'm just glad it was available. She's like, thank you so much. So my graduation present from uni for my parents was just, they gave me some money. They're like, just go anywhere you want in the world. And by this point, I had been pretty invested in New Zealand. So I chose New Zealand of all places. And the WBC, so the old domestic competition at the time, was running, and she was playing in it. Went to a Harbor Breeze game and then met with her. And yeah, just had some good chats. And then she actually gave me one of her, I guess because she had seen the WNBL jersey, she had brought a New Zealand jersey. I'm not sure if she still remembers this, but I certainly do. And she gave me her New Zealand jersey, one of her Tall Friends ones. And I was like, this is the coolest thing. And to me, that just grounded me. And doing what I do now, I was like, wow, like, I know you had to work your butt off to get this jersey, and now you're giving it to me. And so that just kind of created that to me, like a special, like, no matter what happens, just kind of that connection that she gave that to me. And, it further inspired me. And so, yeah, it's really cool to have her back now, have her playing Toei last year and this year. It's definitely full circle, but I'm just happy for her that she gets to play at home. But it's, when I'll be lying to say it wasn't cool for me too. To see somebody who originally inspired you and then, they're in front of you playing. But yeah, she's just a really cool human. So it's great to have her around, and, I've learned a lot from her, from both talking to her and just, otherwise.
That's an incredible story. And a lot of the athletes, they are in the position to inspire other people just by doing so little. They don't need to do much, just by being kind and saying hi and sign one autograph, taking like 5 seconds of their time just to hang around with the fans. And you never know who you're going to meet and who you're going to impact. Before I come to United States and live here and watch a lot of college sport and NBA, I'm always curious of why that people so mentally, emotionally invested in college sport over some of the professional sports. One prime example is that the game I went to watch Charlize Ledger-Walker play against the Cal, I told my parents there, right? They've never been to any college basketball. That was their first one. You know exactly what happened. She got hurt. So I was worried for her, as a Kiwi. But she ended up coming back in second half and just hit that incredible game tiring shots at the end. It was just incredible. When I asked my mom post game, she was like, I've never seen anything like this before. My heart was all jumping. I felt like I was almost having a heart attack. And that's one impact, right? But then I noticed post game, all the Cal players setting up seats and tables all around the court. So for the fans to come down and get autograph and check, they didn't just shoot off and leave. They ended up staying there for like almost an hour extra just to sign autograph and talk to the fans. So they really took their time. So that got me thinking, was like, okay, so this is the reason why a lot of people invest in college sports, because they're so close, and college knows that, right? Like the PR department knows that. They want people to invest. This is a good example what a professional team could do, right? Not just the college team. And especially when places like New Zealand, when everybody's kind of know each other, right? And you add on that extra bits in, you never know what's going to do. Like the last week, we had an interview with Jet Barlow, right? The reason why he's so passionate about basketball is because he went to the Breakers games and he met those players. He didn't want to become LeBron James. He didn't want to become Michael Jordan. He wanted to become Tom Abercrombie, Corey Webster. They are right there in their front door, and be able to showcase their skill and make them think that, okay, he's a Kiwi. He's able to do that. What is stopping me from doing it? You know what I mean?
100%. I just love that, and honestly, that's essentially why I love New Zealand so much. And college, I mean, it was great that my first introduction was to college basketball, because you can now, sometimes it kind of depends on where you are, what the circumstances are, but you actually can talk to them, and I feel like there is more room to get to know them than, say, a professional game. Now, professional is great, an NBA, WNBA, EuroLeague. I don't know as much about Europe, but there's so many. There are good things about all of it, but New Zealand, man, like I think that's why I really enjoyed it, is because the proximity you have. And I've always said, like, the closer you are, probably the more you'll get to learn. And again, because as the game grows, we can't always have that access, which is difficult, but that's how you get fans. And that Jed Barlow interview was fascinating. But like you said, he was watching the NBL, and these are the guys that he's looking up to. But you have an ability to do that, and there's just something so special about having that proximity and that connection. And even if you just get to see them or just talk to them for 2 seconds, you're right, that interaction can impact a person. And college basketball, it's so much fun to watch. But just knowing after the game that you can go up and talk to them is even better. So it's definitely a special experience, and it's cool that you guys got to experience that. And also, I'm not surprised that Charlize came back.
She's one of the toughest person I ever met. Not just being a player, as a person. Like, you have to think about it. She gone through COVID, right? And she was on her own the whole time in Washington State, right? And can you imagine what she has to overcome being away from family for years? And so does quite a lot of other college players. And that's why I think they're very deserved to be, putting a spotlight on, and people need to know that kind of story. And that's one of the huge reasons why I started this, is because when I was growing up, I have no idea. The only person I kind of know is like, okay, Sean Marks. He played for Cal, but that's it. I don't know any stories. I don't know how he was brought up, and I don't know what has he gone through before he become the next GM. I want to learn that kind of story, but I didn't have opportunity. Not just because of the internet, it's just because there's not enough spotlight on them. There's nobody there to tell their story. And that's why I feel so passionate about. I'm not a historian. Every day I'm learning something new about New Zealand basketball, and I love it. And shout out to the New Zealand Basketball Facebook group. Without them, I probably wouldn't learn as much history. They used to have a very cool little segment every Thursday, which is talking about the previous New Zealand basketball players. Like some player I have never heard of, but they play for the Tall Blacks, but they have story to tell, but nobody else was doing it. There was no, you're not going to see those articles on Stuff. You're not going to see those articles on, New Zealand Herald. And that was one source that I found that fascinating. People just started doing their own. I think that's one of the reasons why I just started myself. So the point is, somebody needs to shine a spotlight on them. And also, I want to shout out to Mike Lacey. He, he does a lot for the basketball community in New Zealand, and he's one of my inspirations. Start writing post game article and things like that. Just have that little summary.
I don't think he realizes how big of an influence he actually is, because he's actually the only reason I knew half the stuff that I did, because when I first got into it, I didn't really know anything, but that was because of the lack of information, and it was Mike that I learned it from. But I say, like, what you're doing is so important, because those stories, you're right, like, and how are we supposed to inspire people if we don't share those stories? But you're right, somebody's got to do it. And Sean, especially in America, not, Steven Adams is topical, as he should be, but, Sean Marks is probably the other one that's most talked about, maybe Kirk Penny, depending on how much basketball you watch. But, having the stories like Sean, and you're right, when, the strength and conditioning and the nutrition and all that other stuff that builds up to it wasn't as big, how these guys get to where they are now was surely, and we've both seen enough of the talent that if those guys can do it, obviously there's a work ethic and a discipline that needs to be had there. The young ones can do it. But how do they know that's even possible without these stories? And so I think it's just so important what you're doing as well. And please don't stop. Because it is just, we need that, and for the boys and the girls. Because again, like, you can't be what you can't see.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can say the same thing to you. Please don't stop. Keep doing what you're doing. You're doing an amazing job. And I want to just touch on how we met, right? I was doing a documentary called How Would You Like to Be Remembered? Somebody gave me your Instagram handle. It's like, hey, can you check this out? I was like, oh, wow. It's like, cool. She got a lot of content about New Zealand women's basketball. That is the perfect source for me to learn about New Zealand women's basketball. And as I read, I was like, wait a minute, she's American. She's not even Kiwi. How does that? So in my head, I couldn't process like, how does she learn about New Zealand basketball and so dedicated to it? And being from America, you understand there's so much distraction. There's baseball, college basketball, college football, everything's ingrained into the community. Why is this American girl focusing on New Zealand women's basketball? So that got me so curious, and I started learning about you, and we have conversation and things like that. And obviously, I asked you the question, how would you like to be remembered? I believe that's how our friendship began. And then, long story short, a few years later, we get to interview one of my favorite New Zealand basketball figure, Phil Jones. Phil taught me the best technique, which I passed on to my kid. My son now can consistently shoot jumpers because that technique. One question I asked him is, how did you get so good at shooting? What did you do? He basically told me it's repetition. He used to, sorry, Phil, if I tell this story, hopefully there's no legal consequences. He told me he usually pick the lock and go into the gym and shoot by himself. And that's how he becomes so good, just repetitions, right? So that got me thinking, okay, how do you encourage kids to become a better shooter? Because shooting in basketball is one of the most important things. If you can't shoot, you can't really play unless you're Beam Wallace and you have natural physicality, and also you just have that natural athleticism like him and Dennis Rodman. But there's only one in, I don't know, 10 million people, right? So if you want to actually become a professional basketball, you have to be able to shoot, right? So he gave me a huge tip on how to encourage kids to be able to practice what is the standard they need to hit. Not just 30 shots a day, it's 300, right? How do you encourage them? By breaking it down each week. You slowly increase, and you put a pace for them so that they don't get discouraged. Because when kids start shooting, I remember when I start shooting, I can't. I'm building a great wall of China because I'm just literally just breaking it every single time, right? So I didn't know what to do. So now I'll be able to encourage the kids to practice on their own. Also, if it wasn't for that interview, I wouldn't get to know Kat. Like, again, you wouldn't have known her story unless you were in front of her and somebody. I couldn't believe her story wasn't being told widely. Like, I couldn't believe I only heard that story, I don't know, 10 years after she retired. She technically hasn't retired. She still plays or whatever.
I think she's never going to actually like fully retire.
I guess when you're a professional basketball player, you don't fully retire. You still play, right? I know Jamal Crawford is a prime example. He still goes to 24-hour fitness and play pickup games all the time after he retired. Apart from that interview, my next question for you is that what has been your favorite interview?
Oh, that's a good question. I think one of them that had to be up there was I got to interview Ritorya Tamilo during the Women's Asia Cup last year in Sydney, and that was really cool because it felt just really official, but I was able to get media access thanks to Basketball New Zealand, and I just met them in the team hotel. I just very much felt like a media member, but she also knew me, so there wasn't, to me, like, at least I hope it wasn't for her, like, any awkwardness, and just I had never heard her story about, so how do you go from someone who's playing, high school basketball on a Friday night to getting a call up for the Toll Ferns and playing in Sydney and then eventually going on to college. And so it was a really, really cool experience getting to do that. Another interview, I would say, this is going back COVID times. So during COVID, I actually did a series called the Sideline series, and then something else called like the Legend series or something. And it was all during lockdown because I think because we all missed basketball. And so what I did is I made a list of people I could try and track down and just chat to them and learn their stories and write them up. So I would say Justine Reed was one of them that I did, and that was a real honor. And I had heard about a lot of stuff that she did, but man, when we have these, as we call Kiwis call them, a yarn, it was about 2 hours long, and I was like, there's so much good stuff in here that I don't know, like how to, like, I just don't know how to compile it all into one place. But so that took a while to figure out how to tweak and make it work. But that was so cool because to me, it's the likes of her and Jody that, they walk so the others could run. And she is so cool. And, I just want her to have all the success. And I would say probably in the spirit of college hoops, Zara Jillings and Kendall Jeremiah at Fordham, because that was actually one of my first ones. When I was in New York doing my master's, they were also doing their undergrad at Fordham. And so I was able to, go uptown to the Bronx, and it was just a shot in the dark, like emailing the sports information guy and was like, hey, I think Brian was his name. I was like, hey, like, this is what I'm doing. I understand this is completely random and you don't want to do this or they don't want to do this, but, and they were just so hospitable. Coach Gately was amazing. And the girls were, just how you'd expect, fantastic people. And, I got to go to a couple games and I talked to them after. And I think just after not the repercussions of that were just positive. And it's back when I was also kind of living what I call like two lives, where I was living the practical New York City side of things. Like, you're going day to day, you're living in this huge city and you're going to school and you're just kind of living life. But then also there is that other side of me, which is tapping into what I really want to do, which is New Zealand stuff, and having the proximity to them and, just building that relationship allowed me to do that. So that one I also remember really fondly.
Incredible. Those are great stories. And you just mentioned Jody Cameron. How amazing is that she become an owner of a women's basketball team? Can you talk to me about how do you feel about the league, where the league's going at the moment, and how do you feel about that team? Obviously, you're gonna have a little bit of bias, I know. Panina's on that team, so it's fair. So tell me about that team. How do you feel about it when you hear the news? What are some of the things in story that you learn by being around them?
It just makes me so excited because I got to New Zealand just as the inaugural season was starting for Toihi in 2022. And so I thought that was exciting. And obviously, there's so many great people behind the scenes at Basketball New Zealand, at Sky, like Jody, like all the owners who are making this league what it is and making it something that you, honestly, quite frankly, if you're not watching, you're missing out. In terms of the Kahu, it's really, really special. I keep saying it's special, but it really is, because obviously, like you just said, there's 5 all-female ownership for the bands that Coffee starting this year. And having known Jody and, on the subject of, yes, of Jody for a second, because Jody is she's been one, I guess, like the original support system for me since I came here. And so to see her and knowing what she's, and she'll just like randomly tell me stories about like her time in the 12 Ferns or whatever. And she's like, "You want to hear this stuff?" I'm like, "Yes, I love that." And so, she used to tell me what she was doing and everything. And so to hear her, from all that she's given and how she's given back, and watching her do that to now getting to own part of a team, like, holy crap. And the one that she coaches and has done so well with. So obviously there was a lot of joy, and I've gotten to know some of the other owners as well. There's only one who's based in Dubai at the moment that I haven't gotten to speak to, but the others are just incredible people. And I've had some really good chats with them, and they make a lot of time for people, which I think is so amazing. And I think knowing all the owners across the league, they all do that. And they're all very good about making their place open and welcoming. And it's just, you look forward to going. But up here, I think there's just a different mindset, because they're like, okay, like, we are going to be the first all female led owned team. Okay. How are we going to work with that and just keep that momentum rolling? And just, I think that morale has just carried over into the team, because I was around the team when they were getting their photos taken. And this is like when some of them were meeting for the first time, and not everybody, like, I think all but 2 were there. And you could already tell it was just a really good vibe. And I think, that organization really prides themselves on culture. And so they all fit in really well together, because you have the core of, Panina, Amari, Crystal, Talia that are returning. And then, you have the Aussies that come in, many of whom are familiar with at least a couple of those players who played NBL 1. And then the American imports. And then also you've got the younger ones, the development players. And I think it's really a great opportunity for these development players across the league to be in that environment, because from what I've seen across the country, they're all just part of it, and they're doing the same things as the team and everything. And so they are really a member, even though they're a little bit younger and they're most likely still playing high school basketball. They still get these experiences. So it's really great to see. We're already a couple runs into the season already, and I can't tell you who I think is going to be I have an idea who might be in the Final Four, but I can't tell you who's going to win the title, because it's such a elite comp this year, which is what everybody wanted, I think, and it's what its potential could be. And the players certainly know it, and they also work really hard. So, because they know when it comes to playing whoever it is, it's not going to be an easy win. So they're used to that. And then Panina, having been, she's been pro for many years now, that, she's the captain. And so because she's had that international experience as well. She's, they're able to come in, and she's able to kind of help gel those women together. So it's really exciting stuff to see. I don't see too much behind the scenes. I kind of let them do that, but every once in a while I'm able to pop in and see it. So from what I've seen, it looks great, and the league itself is just on fire. So yeah, it's really cool to see, especially as a women's basketball fan.
Beginning of this season, I believe there was a little bit differences of opinion. I want to say they were gonna have 5 imports. Some people in New Zealand, they hear it, they were like, "What about our Kiwi girls? Who's gonna give them the opportunity?" What are your thoughts on that particular thing?
It's just I'm getting used to, and I will admit I was probably one of the ones at first who I was kind of like, huh? My eyes definitely widened. I was like, oh, this is interesting. But I think we're all kind of adverse to change at first. And what I kept telling myself is you can't judge it until it actually happens. And so I just tried to keep an open mind. And I think, I like your point. I think it makes a lot of sense, especially with the young ones around, but how are they supposed to learn? And because New Zealand is so far away from everybody else, there's not a ton of chances to, play with these players or learn from them, because, they can have international experience at the age group level, But at the end of the day, trying to replace the chance to have court time with someone like a Test Magin, for example, you can't replicate that. So it is, I think, a really good learning tool and opportunity, and also because of the Rapid League. And so the Kiwi girls will get to play in there. And not saying, sometimes the younger ones are the ones who are going to be on the bench, likely most of the time. If something happens, then they'll play really hard in training, and we may not see it right away, and they may not get heaps of game time. But if something happens or if there's an injury, then that player who's getting to play against that higher level important training, they might get to go on the floor. So when you reframe it, actually, I think there is actually a lot of promise there. And the Australians, because there's some familiarities with the Australian game, and because we are so close to them, it's good. I think it's good for them to come over here. And so I think there are a lot of advantages to it. But I think, again, it's one of those things you just have to see it at first.
What are some of the big significant cultural differences you encounter when you move here?
I would say probably like the availability of like food, kind of like, because I'm so used to visiting in America, we have all these different grocery store options, like the markets, and here we have. And not saying the ones that here are bad. I'm just not used to having like a limited number, and I usually had to end up going to different places in 1 week to get everything that I need. Again, not a huge problem. Also, and I don't. Maybe it's just with the washer dryer that I grew up with, but the one I have here in my apartment is all in one. But here's the thing. Fine, that's cool, and the unit and I get along now, okay? But when I moved in, they didn't give me a manual, so I was like, is this just a New Zealand thing? Like, I have no idea how to work this, and so I spent the first day here, like, hoping it wasn't gonna catch fire. Um, but yeah, I think it was just that, and then also just how, um, I think, well, one of the reasons I came was just because of how friendly everybody is and how kind of a collectivist culture, for the most part, that New Zealand is. But seriously, just how much everybody's willing to help you, which I am really terrible at accepting. Because I'm an independent person. So I've definitely learned more to accept the help of other people and at least entertain it before I completely shoot it down. I'd like to think I got better about that. So I would say, probably, although random, probably those are the things.
Like when you first arrive in New Zealand, obviously when you go to the games or go to secondary high school games and things like that, how do you introduce yourself?
It's interesting. I feel like I'm still refining that method, to be honest. Like, so the first real interaction I had was the day after I landed, because it was a preseason Phi and Kahu game at AT, and I ended up getting in somehow, and they all like just kind of knew me, and I was like, oh, this is really weird. But it was Mike Lacey was there, Matt Lacey he was the GM of the Kahu at the time. Like, they all just kind of knew me. And so usually what will happen is I'll show up and I'll kind of walk around, and I'll usually find at least one person that I know. So usually that's Mike. But there are other people as well that I'll see it. And this goes for MBL too. I'll go and I'll just kind of start. I'll just usually just kind of start talking to people, because we'll, like, inevitably, just because everyone's so friendly, we end up talking about the game or whatever it is with the crowd. Just because I guess I just kind of look approachable sometimes, or I'll just start talking to people for fun, and at the end of it, we'll introduce ourselves, and I just say, I promote basketball. I do a lot of women's basketball, but um, you know, just Kiwi hoops in general. And I kind of use that as a segue. So we kind of warm up to it, and then I just kind of give them a spiel of what I think I am.
What do you hope to achieve in the next 5 years?
Honestly, I just want to make a difference as best I can. And I've learned in the past that for me, telling myself, I think there is power in laying out exactly what you want to do, and it worked because I'm here. But I think also there's also just as much beauty in understanding that what things can ebb and flow, so you can have a general idea of it. So that's what I started to do. Is I started to plan is I want to have a general idea of how I want to see things unfold, instead of maybe concrete things. But I guess in general, I would say I just want to do as much as I can here in New Zealand. I want to, be as present as I can. I want to tell as many stories I've been lucky. A lot of the relationships that I've wanted to build, I've been able to. And I just want to keep fostering those. And I want to just see how big of a stage we can get Kiwi Hoops on. I don't know. I think kind of where the whole waiting part is we don't know how that's going to be. But I also think, within the next couple of years, I want to get a really good foundation down in terms of I want to create my own. I kind of call it my own little empire for my research topic, which is ambassadorship and community sport. And I want to do something around that where there's a structure in place that can support, the ambassadors, people in sport in New Zealand or, around the world, to make them feel more recognized. I don't know what all the nuances are yet, which is why the description is so vague, but there's that. And I just want to be doing something that I love. And I want to be hopefully still going around the world. But also just, but be here and be in New Zealand and just kind of live it up every day and just see what kind of change we can make. I'll be wiser, hopefully, and have some, have some other ideas, but just keep learning and seeing how we can apply it.
After meeting you, I learned that you are a very giving person. You're not one of those person that just go like, oh, what's in for me? You never ask that question, right? You always just give what you got and share whatever information you have, which is very admirable. On behalf of the New Zealand basketball community, I thank you for what you do. But I want to ask again, when it's all said and done, how would you like to be remembered?
I think my answer from that video hasn't changed much. I think it's going to be somebody who is authentic and genuine and just intentional in what she does. Who's someone who's going to stick up for the people that she believes in. I'm going to have your back no matter what. That includes yours and, the people here. Because, for the people that that I'm close with that are in my circle, I would run through a wall for them. And so just, hopefully keep staying that person, somebody who worked hard to achieve what she wanted. Because I think everybody who knows me knows that, I haven't had to, nothing's really been given to me ever. So it's just, I want to keep that reputation of, just working, did everything she could to her fullest potential and be a high performer. And, just someone who enjoyed her life.
Out of all the players that you've seen so far this year, is there any young player, that up and coming players that you saw impresses you?
Based on the high school circuit, I think one of them, it's easier for me to say because I'm up in Oakland, but Cody Williams Seffo, I think she's definitely on the rise and on the way up. Amy Pateman, but also, I'm just thinking about the girls in Canterbury. There's a lot of promising talent down there, and so those girls for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you, definitely. She'll be one person that I'm gonna keep an eye on when she plays college ball in America. Not sure where, but when she does, I'll definitely watch her game for sure.
Yeah, I'd say her and Bailey. We were not to mention Bailey Pavel. But yeah, Cody, she's going to do great things. Bailey will do great things. And I think most of us are waiting for the day that, whenever Cody's ready and feels like it's right to announce where she's going, I'm sure she'll do that. But whatever school she's going to, we'll be lucky to have her. That's for sure.
And also, how exciting for Hawaii, getting 3 Kiwi girls.
So the new Portland or the new Gonzaga.
But yeah, shout out to the Portland girls too. And also, want to give a special shout out to Ari, who just got her ACL injury, which this is the last thing we want to see as a player. So prayers and thoughts goes out to Ari. Hopefully she have a speedy recovery. I believe it's the opposite ACL of which she previously got injured. So hopefully she's gonna recover quick from that, and I would love to see her play again. Obviously,
yes. Prayers up for Ari. Hope she's okay. She's and then just coming off another major injury. That's a lot of resilience personified right there too. Because athletes, they are susceptible to getting hurt, and it's unfortunate we see people go down. But I gotta say, I do want to give a shout out to honestly all the Kiwis because they inspire me. But especially when you're overseas at their age and they leave home early to go over, and then they have something happen, a catastrophic injury like that, that takes a lot of resilience to get back to where they were before, if not better, and to be themselves again. So just shout out to them and we'll definitely be representing them however best we can, even though they're not necessarily playing.
So what do you miss about America apart from your family? Everybody know that, you're a big family person, right?
I would say probably being in proximity to my friends, because when I was growing up, I was always around them. Also, I would room with them at uni or whatever, or just being able to kind of go on spontaneous adventures with them. And I have some stories because they're the most of those are the ones that really grew up with me and saw me through it all. So it's always nice to have them around. So I miss them. Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, all that stuff. I can guarantee you, whenever I'm in the US, even if it's just for a couple of hours, I will be going through those markets and getting, even, fruit, vegetables, because that's the kind of person I am. But I also love a good biscuit. So I will be going and racking up chocolate chips and biscuits from those two stores as well. So I'll say that.
Man, Trader Joe's needs to give you a sponsorship or something, but I don't know. What is it with Trader Joe's? I know all the girls seem to be really into it. You remember the interview I had with Alafotu?
I know.
She said the same thing. She was like, the first thing she want to eat will be just going to Trader Joe's.
I
Just
listened to that answer intently. So I was like, I wonder what she's gonna say. And I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. But honestly, like even I was at a conference in May in Minnesota, and um I was with a group of Canadians, and we were going to do I think we were touring the Viking Stadium, but we needed a quick lunch beforehand. And literally like we all just kind of stood in a circle and we're like, what are we gonna eat? And I was like, Trader Joe's, but that's where I was gonna go. And they're like, yes. But they have everything. They've got snacks, they've got like meals you can heat up, they've got actual groceries, like they have pretty much everything. So yes, Ella, I heard that. And I see you, and I raise you a bag of chocolate chips.
you mentioned your friends and you miss your friends back home. That's a huge sacrifice that you made by making that move to New Zealand. You're leaving all your friends that you grew up with behind to dedicate your time and energy towards New Zealand basketball. So, that's incredible.
I want to give them a shout out too, because they may not all necessarily know. Now, some of them follow my account, so they have kind of a vague idea, but they don't really see the nuances of it day to day. And it was again, it was kind of weird because for the longest time, because I think, what some people maybe don't know is that I had to do a lot of my stuff online, was because I was still at school after I had started my basketball account. And um but then COVID happened, so I couldn't get here. So I was doing everything online, but my mind, it was so weird because like I was, I was physically one place and I was trying to be as present as I could, and I wanted to be with all my people, but at the same time, I was locked in on being here because this is something. It was weird because and I was so happy for them, and I was able to celebrate a lot of life milestones with them before I left. But then when my time came, they were also there for me, and they've always been super supportive of what I've been doing. My best friend actually got engaged literally right before I left, and we were hanging out, and like her fiance, and now her now husband, was asking just all about these questions. And so we were actually watching highlights of the Tuatara, and I was showing like some of the Tolfern stuff, and because my friends' partners, they want to know what's going on. And so they also, they ask me questions about it. So I'm also trying to get them turned on to MBL and, doing our job of asking, like, hey, like, check this out. But they've always been there through the good and the bad. And it's tough because they knew, and we all knew, like, if I was going to chase this dream, I would actually have to leave the country at some point. But they've been so understanding and so supportive. Like, there's been never one ounce of negativity from them, and they hype me up, they hype up New Zealand. They know how much I love it here, and they recognize that I also have really close friends here now that and some they've gotten to hear about them, or maybe in some instances even get to meet some of them, and so my worlds can come across. But yeah, they've been super supportive. I'm super lucky, and I wouldn't be here without them, and they inspire me to keep furthering my passion and just being myself. And yeah, so they also make up who I am. And so I'm just want to say thank you to them on the record.
On behalf of the New Zealand basketball community, of the things that you do, things that you're gonna keep doing for the community, and I'm looking forward to see more of your work. And hopefully, fingers crossed, one day you're gonna be more involved, maybe become an owner of one of the teams. Um, just planting the seed right now, but you have to speak into existence, right?
I 100% appreciate it, and thank you again. And because honestly, like I wouldn't be doing what I do without the people here being so open, and especially the ones who found out or kind of knew who I was, but didn't really know me just because of distance or whatever. But they still were willing to talk to me anyway, and they're still my friends now, and it's so cool. But like honestly, I think all I've ever really wanted was to kind of belong, and I do belong, because I have a family, I have really great friends and stuff. But at the same time, I think in a sports setting or in a work setting, I've been part of good groups, but I've never been part of anything like this. And this is something I've wanted my whole life for. And it's just, no matter what happens, I think if you really delve into it, you come to New Zealand kind of knowing that it's a very volunteer based economy. Everybody's doing it because they love it, which is also partially what attracted me here. So I know that not everyone's going to thank you. That's okay. Like, if you run on that kind of stuff, that this may not be for you. I've gotten some really sweet messages from parents, even from grandparents, and just telling those little words of encouragement. The ones I do get, I screenshot because those keep me going. But man, I'll tell you, like my heart loves it here. This is definitely home for me, and I hope to keep going as long as possible. Let's beat the ownership thing into existence. I wouldn't be sad about that. But again, just thank you for everything you've done and for being such a great friend along the way. And it's been really cool, and I just can't wait to see what cool stuff we keep doing in the future, because I'm confident we will.
Lastly, have you got any question for me?
Actually, yes, I've been thinking about this. If you could trade places with any NBA player for a day, who would it be and why?
One day I want to be Wang Zhizhi. Trade places one day. I'm pretty sure he's the first Chinese basketball player that ever played, and he has to overcome a lot of challenges too, because at the time Chinese government and also the basketball teams and CBA doesn't want to kind of give out their talents. He's one of the best talent that ever come out apart from him and Yao Ming. At the time they were like head to head. Yao Ming was still young, but they were head to head. Wang Zhizhi's team won like multiple championships. So they didn't want to give him up. So they put on a lot of barriers stopping him from coming out and playing NBA. Even after he got drafted, he didn't come out right away. It's like I'm not sure if you're familiar with Sabonis. The original Sabonis is quite the story of the Soviet Union doesn't want him to come out and all that stuff. So it's a very similar situation, but he ended up coming out. I guess, for me, it's like he represented China very well. He's always well-spoken, humble person, never had too much ego. And then obviously his NBA career wasn't that long. And then when he went back to China, he's still dominating the whole CBA with his team, which is incredible. So I guess short answer is I want to trade places with him one day, just to have that experience, how he was like when he got to NBA, how does it feel and what kind of culture shock he have. I want all of that smoke.
That's the story I would definitely want to hear. And the other one I do have for you is, how do you want to be remembered?
How do I want to be remembered? I want to build a legacy that my kids going to be proud of, and that's all. This is a different format than what we normally do. Just like two friends having a conversation. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. I know it's extra long in comparison to some of the other ones that I did.
This is very much like how we would normally, if you were to see us on the street talking, this is very much of what would happen.
This is just our normal conversation. So so different formula, different format. Hope you guys enjoy, but we'll catch you guys the next episode.